Alien billionaire sees human janitor cleaning her disabled child. What she did next was... Colin Grant adjusted his light gray jumpsuit, tucking a cleaning rag into his back pocket as he pushed his janitorial cart down the gleaming hallway of Celestial Academy. The prestigious school for the elite alien families of the Galactic Confederation boasted architecture that seemed to defy gravity, sweeping arches of polished metal and transparent surfaces that reflected the amber glow of the setting sun. Most days, Colin moved through these halls like a ghost. The wealthy alien parents barely acknowledged his existence, their eyes sliding past him as if he were just another cleaning drone. The students weren't much better, their laughter cutting off whenever he entered a room to empty trash receptacles or mop up spills. "Just another day in paradise," he muttered to himself, the sound of his voice echoing slightly in the empty corridor. It was well past dismissal time, and the academy had emptied of its usual bustle. Colin preferred working during these quiet hours. No judgmental stares, no having to step aside as entitled teenagers pushed past him. Just him and the peaceful rhythm of his work. As he rounded the corner toward the science wing, a soft whimpering sound caught his attention. Colin paused, his head tilting slightly as he tried to identify the source. It was coming from Classroom 12B, a specialized laboratory for advanced xenobiology. The door was partially open, spilling a thin line of light into the darkened hallway. Colin approached cautiously, peering through the gap. Inside, a small figure sat alone in a high-tech wheelchair. She was a young Azurian girl, no more than 8 or 9 years old, with delicate blue skin that seemed almost translucent under the harsh classroom lights. Her snow-white hair hung in disarray around her face, which was streaked with a viscous purple substance, medical residue from some kind of treatment. The girl tried to wipe her face with her sleeve, but her movements were uncoordinated, and she only managed to smear the residue further across her cheek. A small, frustrated sob escaped her. Colin hesitated only briefly before pushing the door open. "Hey there," he said softly, keeping his voice gentle. "Looks like you could use a hand." The girl's head snapped up, her large, iridescent eyes widening in surprise and a touch of fear. "It's okay," Colin assured her, approaching slowly. "I work here. My name's Colin." He reached into his cart and pulled out a clean microfiber cloth, dampening it with purified water from his bottle. "Mind if I help you clean up a bit? That stuff looks uncomfortable." The girl studied him for a long moment before giving a small nod. "I'm Linnea," she said, her voice musical despite its weakness. "Nice to meet you, Linnea." Colin knelt beside her wheelchair, bringing himself to her eye level. "This won't hurt a bit, promise." With careful, gentle strokes, he began wiping away the purple residue from her face. Linnea flinched at first, but soon relaxed under his ministrations. "Better?" he asked after a few moments. Linnea nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "Much better, thank you." "No problem. What is this stuff, anyway?" "Regenerative enzyme paste," she replied with the matter-of-fact tone children often use for complex topics. "It's supposed to help my neural pathways, but it burns and itches." Colin winced in sympathy. "Sounds rough. You're pretty brave to handle that." "Mother says Azurians don't complain about necessary discomfort," Linnea recited, though her expression suggested she'd heard this many times. "Well, I think even the bravest warriors deserve a break sometimes," Colin said with a wink, earning a genuine smile from the girl. He was about to say more when the classroom door swung fully open with a soft whoosh. "Linnea, the transport is..." The voice cut off abruptly. Colin turned to find himself face to face with the most striking woman he'd ever seen. Tall and regal, with deep blue skin that seemed to shimmer with subtle iridescence, she stood frozen in the doorway. Her golden eyes' vertical pupils dilated in surprise, fixed on him with laser-like intensity. Her sleek business attire, a form-fitting suit beneath a long brown coat, screamed wealth and power. Colin immediately recognized Alista Tex, the widowed CEO of Tex Interstellar Technologies and one of the wealthiest individuals in the sector, and evidently Linnea's mother. "What are you doing with my daughter?" Her voice was cool and controlled, but with an undercurrent of steel. Colin slowly stood, aware of how this might look. "Ma'am, I was just helping..." "Mother!" Linnea interrupted excitedly. "This is Colin." He cleaned the enzyme paste off my face. It was itching terribly. Something flickered across Alista's perfect features. surprise, confusion, perhaps even a touch of shame. Her golden eyes darted between her daughter's clean face and the damp cloth in Colin's hand. "I see," she said finally, her tone softening marginally. "That was considerate of you." "Just doing my job, ma'am," Colin replied with a modest shrug, though cleaning children's faces wasn't exactly in his job description. Elista's gaze lingered on him a moment longer than necessary, something unreadable in those alien eyes. Then she straightened, composure returning like a shield. "Come, Lanaya, Dr. Thalen is waiting to discuss your progress." She moved to take control of the wheelchair, her slender blue fingers wrapping around the handles. "Bye, Colin," Lanaya called over her shoulder as her mother guided the chair toward the door. "Thank you." "Anytime, kiddo," he replied with a warm smile. Just before exiting, Elista paused and turned back. For a brief moment, her imperious mask slipped, revealing something that looked almost like genuine curiosity. "What is your name?" "Your full name?" "Colin Grant, ma'am." She nodded once, committing it to memory. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Grant." With that, she was gone, leaving Colin standing alone in the classroom, wondering what had just happened and why his heart was suddenly beating faster in his chest. 3 days after the encounter with Lanaya, Colin was buffing the marble-like floors of the Academy's main atrium when Principal Dorn's voice crackled over his comm unit. "Grant, report to my office immediately." Colin frowned. In his 6 months at Celestial Academy, he'd never been summoned by the principal, a stern Phaedron with 4 eyes and a reputation for micromanagement. "On my way, sir," he replied, securing his equipment before heading to the administrative wing. Principal Dorn's assistant, a nervous Malurian with translucent skin, waved him straight through to the inner office. Inside, Colin found not only Principal Dorn, but also Elista Tex, perched elegantly on a visitor's chair, her golden eyes fixing on him the moment he entered. "Mr. Grant," Principal Dorn's voice was unusually deferential. "Miss Tex has requested a private meeting with you. You may use my office." Before Colin could respond, the principal hurried out, closing the door behind him. "Ma'am?" Colin nodded respectfully, remaining standing. "Is Lanaya all right?" A flicker of surprise crossed Elista's face. "Your first concern is for my daughter's welfare? Interesting." She gestured to the chair opposite her. "Please sit." Colin complied, feeling distinctly out of place in his work clothes across from her immaculate business attire. Today, a sleek silver suit that complemented her blue skin perfectly. "Lanaya is well," Elista continued. "In fact, she hasn't stopped talking about you since our encounter. The human who wasn't afraid to touch me, she calls you." Colin frowned. "Afraid to touch her? Why would anyone be afraid?" "Many are," Elista replied, studying him intently. "Her condition is rare, even among Azurians. Some believe it contagious, despite medical evidence to the contrary." "That's ridiculous," Colin said, forgetting his place for a moment. "She's just a kid." "Indeed." A small smile played at the corners of Elista's mouth. "I've been researching you, Mr. Grant. Not much to find, I imagine." "On the contrary, former Earth Alliance Marine, distinguished service record, combat medic training, multiple commendations for bravery under fire." She tilted her head. "Yet now you clean floors at an alien preparatory school." Colin shifted uncomfortably. "The war changed a lot of things for a lot of people." "The Proxima Centauri conflict," she nodded. "Humans fought admirably against the Draconid invasion. Your species was greatly underestimated." "We're good at that." "Being underestimated," Colin replied with a hint of pride. Elista leaned forward slightly. "I have a proposition for you, Mr. Grant. I want to hire you as Lanaya's personal caretaker." Colin blinked in surprise. "I'm a janitor, Ms. Tex. You're a combat medic with exceptional observational skills who showed more compassion to my daughter in 5 minutes than her previous caretakers have in years." Her golden eyes held his. "And I'm prepared to compensate you accordingly." She slid a data pad across the desk. Colin glanced down and nearly choked at the figure displayed. "That's generous." "It's appropriate for the position," Elista replied coolly. "The role would include residing at my estate, accompanying Lanaya to her treatments, and assisting with her physical therapy. Your military background makes you ideal for her security as well." "Security?" Colin raised an eyebrow. Is there a threat I should know about? Nothing specific, Alista said, perhaps too quickly. But as the heir to Tech's Interstellar, Linnea is a potential target. Corporate espionage is aggressive in our sector. Colin studied her face, sensing there was more she wasn't telling him. And what does Linnea think about this arrangement? Another flash of surprise. You're the first candidate to ask that question. A genuine smile softened her features. She was quite enthusiastic, actually. Demanded I hire the human with the kind hands immediately. Colin couldn't help but smile at that. Kid's got good taste. Indeed she does. Alista's gaze lingered on his face a moment longer than necessary. So, Mr. Grant, do you accept my offer? Colin considered the proposition. The money was incredible, enough to set him up comfortably for years. But more compelling was the thought of helping Linnea, a child clearly in need of someone who saw her as more than just a medical condition. I accept, he said finally, on one condition. Alista's eyebrows rose, clearly unaccustomed to conditions being placed on her offers. Call me Colin, he said with a slight grin. Mister? Grant makes me feel like my father. The tension in her shoulders eased, and something that might have been amusement flickered in her golden eyes. Very well, Colin. His name sounded exotic in her melodic accent. You may call me Alista, but only in private. In public, propriety must be maintained. Understood, ma'am, he replied with a playful emphasis that earned him a sharp look, though not an entirely displeased one. I'll have my assistant send the formal contract to your quarters. You can begin tomorrow. She rose gracefully, extending her hand in the human custom she must have researched. Colin stood and took her hand. Her skin was cooler than a human's, smooth as polished stone, and the contact sent an unexpected current up his arm. From Alista's subtle intake of breath, she felt it too. Until tomorrow then, she said, withdrawing her hand perhaps a fraction slower than necessary. As she turned to leave, Colin called after her. Alista! She paused at the door, looking back over her shoulder. Thank you for trusting me with Linnea. I won't let either of you down. Something vulnerable and genuine flashed across her face before her composed mask returned. See that you don't, she replied, but there was no sting in the words. After she left, Colin sank back into his chair, wondering what he'd just gotten himself into, and why the thought of seeing more of both Tech's women made his heart race with anticipation. The Tech's estate sprawled across a private peninsula overlooking the emerald waters of Lake Lumina. As the private shuttle descended toward the landing pad, Colin took in the sweeping architecture, a harmonious blend of curved metallic structures and living botanical elements that seemed to grow directly from the building itself. Impressive, he murmured, his military duffel bag resting at his feet. The sum total of his possessions fit into one bag, a stark contrast to the opulence that awaited him. The shuttle touched down with barely a whisper. As the door slid open, Colin was greeted not by Alista, but by a tall, thin Thraexian with mottled gray skin and disapproving eyes. Mr. Grant, the alien said, his voice like dry leaves rustling. I am Nex, head of household staff. Follow me. No welcome, no pleasantries, just cold efficiency. Colin shouldered his bag and followed Nex into the mansion. Inside, the grandeur was even more apparent. Soaring ceilings, artwork that seemed to shift and move with the light, and furnishings that blended seamlessly with the organic architecture. Yet despite its beauty, the place felt sterile, lacking the warmth of a true home. Your quarters, Nex announced, stopping before a door. Miss Tex and young Mistress Linnea are attending a medical appointment. They will return in approximately 3 hours. You are expected to familiarize yourself with the estate and Linnea's care protocols in the meantime. He handed Colin a data pad. This contains all necessary information. The staff has been informed of your position. The way Nex said position made it sound like a communicable disease. Thanks for the warm welcome, Colin replied with deliberate cheerfulness. I look forward to working with everyone. Nex's thin lips pressed into an even thinner line. Indeed. Dinner is served precisely at 1900 hours. Do not be late. With that, he turned and glided away. Colin's quarters were spacious and comfortable, if somewhat impersonal. After unpacking his few belongings, he began reviewing Linnea's medical information on the data pad. What he found disturbed him. Linnea suffered from neurogenic atrophy syndrome, a rare genetic condition affecting Azurians. The disease progressively damaged the neural pathways controlling motor function, eventually leading to complete paralysis. The treatments, experimental neural regeneration therapies, were aggressive and, from what Colin could tell, only marginally effective. Even more concerning were the side effects: pain, cognitive fluctuations, and potential organ damage. No wonder the poor kid looked so miserable after her treatments. A soft chime interrupted his reading. The door slid open to reveal a small, round alien with pale pink skin and 4 arms. "Excuse interruption," the creature said in halting standard. "Ampiri, kitchen staff, bring refreshment for human." She, at least Colin assumed it was a she, placed a tray on the table. Instead of the expected water or juice, it held what appeared to be a mug of steaming coffee. "Coffee?" Colin asked, surprised. "How did you know?" Piri's face crinkled in what might have been a smile. "Humans like bitter bean water. Research done." Colin laughed. "Well, your research is spot on. Thank you, Piri." As he reached for the mug, Piri leaned closer. "Warning," she whispered. "Many staff not like humans. Be careful what you eat or drink, if not from Piri or Mistress Tex." Colin's hand froze midair. "They'd actually tamper with my food?" "Not poison," Piri clarified quickly, "but unpleasant additions possible. Threxians especially dislike humans. Say you smell wrong." "Well, that's just hurtful," Colin said with mock offense, earning another crinkly smile from Piri. "Why the anti-human sentiment?" Piri's 4 shoulders performed a complex shrug. "Humans new to galactic community. Rise quickly. Some species threatened. Others jealous. Humans fight draconids when others could not." "And what about you? You don't seem to share their prejudice." "Piri's people, Quarians, small and weak. Draconids took our colony worlds. Humans helped liberate. We remember." She bowed slightly. "Must return to kitchen. Next watches schedules closely." After she left, Colin sipped the coffee, perfectly prepared, and contemplated this new information. Workplace hostility he could handle, but if it affected his ability to care for Linnea, that would be a problem. He spent the next hour exploring the mansion, memorizing layouts and exit points. Old military habits died hard. Everywhere he went, he received cold stares or outright snubs from the staff, primarily the Thraexians, who seemed to make up the security detail. In Linnea's wing, he found her bedroom, a physical therapy room equipped with specialized equipment, and a medical suite that looked like it belonged in a high-tech hospital rather than a private home. The level of medical intervention happening here went far beyond what he'd expected. He was examining a neural stimulator when a voice behind him made him jump. "Curious about my daughter's condition, Mr. Grant?" Colin turned to find Alysta standing in the doorway, her business attire replaced by a flowing garment that reminded him of ancient Earth kimonos. The sight momentarily stole his breath. "Just trying to understand what I'm dealing with," he recovered quickly. "These treatments seem intense for a child her age." Something flashed in Alysta's golden eyes. Defensiveness, perhaps, or guilt. "They are necessary." "Are they?" "The success rate data looks marginal at best, and the side effects—" "I did not hire you to question my medical decisions," Alysta cut him off, her voice sharp. "I hired you to assist with Linnea's care and comfort." Colin held her gaze. "With respect, ma'am, those things aren't separate. If the treatments are causing more harm than good—" "You've been here less than a day," she interrupted again, stepping closer. "Do not presume to understand what my daughter needs better than I do." The air between them crackled with tension, not entirely born of disagreement. Even in her anger, or perhaps because of it, Colin found her magnetic. "Where is Linnea now?" he asked, changing tactics. "Resting. The treatments exhaust her." Alysta's posture softened slightly. "You can meet with her at dinner." Colin nodded. "I've met some of your staff. They seem less than thrilled about having a human around." Alysta waved a dismissive hand. "Their comfort is not my concern. Your effectiveness is. It might affect my effectiveness if they're actively hostile." She raised an eyebrow. "You survived a war, Mr. Grant. I'm confident you can handle a few disapproving servants." Colin, he reminded her, and it's not me I'm worried about. It's how their attitude might impact Lanaya. That gave her pause. A valid concern. I will address it. She studied him with renewed interest. You consistently put my daughter's welfare first. It's unexpected. That's literally my job now, he pointed out. Yes, but she seemed to be searching for words. Most see the position as a path to my favor, not as service to Lanaya. Well, I'm not most people, Colin replied with a slight smile. No, Elista agreed, her golden eyes lingering on his face. You certainly are not. Dinner at the Tex estate was a formal affair. The dining room featured a long table of polished material that resembled mother-of-pearl, set with elegant dishware that seemed to glow from within. Colin, dressed in the business casual attire provided for him, felt distinctly out of place. Elista sat at the head of the table in a shimmering gown that accentuated the elegant curves of her blue-skin form. Lanaya, positioned at her mother's right hand in her hover chair, brightened visibly when Colin entered. "Colin," she called, waving excitedly. "Mother said you're going to live with us now." "That's right, kiddo," he replied with a warm smile, taking the seat across from her. "Hope that's okay with you." "It's the best news ever," Lanaya declared. "Will you tell me stories about Earth?" "And the war? Mother says you were a hero." Colin shot Elista a surprised glance. She looked away, suddenly very interested in adjusting her napkin. "I don't know about hero," he said gently, "but I'd be happy to tell you about Earth sometime." Nex and two other Thraexian servers moved silently around them, placing dishes on the table. Colin noticed they served him last, and with noticeably less care than they showed Elista and Lanaya. "How are you feeling after today's treatment?" he asked Lanaya, ignoring the slight. "Okay, I guess." The girl poked at her food, a colorful arrangement of what appeared to be fruits and proteins. "My skin feels tingly, and my legs hurt even though I can't move them." "Phantom pain," Colin nodded. "That's actually a good sign. It means the neural pathways are still active." "Really?" Lanaya perked up. "Dr. Krell never explains anything to me. He just tells me to be brave." "Different approach," Colin shrugged. "I believe patients do better when they understand what's happening to them." "A human philosophy," Nex interjected as he poured a luminescent blue liquid into Elista's glass. "Azurian medical tradition holds that excessive information creates anxiety in young patients. And yet, look how much calmer she is, just knowing that her pain might be a positive sign," Colin countered pleasantly. Elista observed the exchange with interest. Perhaps there's merit to both approaches. The meal progressed with Lanaya chattering happily about school and her friends, while Colin fielded occasional barbed comments from Nex with good humor. Throughout, he caught Elista watching him, her golden eyes thoughtful. Dessert had just been served, a delicate confection that changed colors as it was eaten, when Lanaya suddenly went rigid in her chair. "Mother!" she gasped, her small face contorting. "It's happening again!" Before anyone could react, Lanaya's body began to convulse violently, her hover chair stabilizers struggling to compensate for the sudden movements. "Seizure," Colin said sharply, already on his feet. "Nex, call the medical staff." The Thraexian hesitated, looking to Elista for confirmation. "Now!" Elista commanded, her voice cracking with fear. Colin moved swiftly to Lanaya's side, carefully easing her from the chair onto the floor, turning her onto her side in the recovery position. "Has this happened before?" he asked, checking her airway, while keeping her positioned to prevent choking. "Twice," Elista knelt beside them, her composure cracking. "The doctors said it was a normal reaction to the treatment." "There's nothing normal about this," Colin muttered, noting the blue tinge spreading across Lanaya's lips. "She's not getting enough oxygen." The medical team burst in, two Vordarian physicians with their characteristic four eyes and spindly limbs. "Stand aside, human," the lead doctor ordered. "This is beyond your primitive understanding." Colin ignored him, continuing to monitor Lanaya's vital signs. "Her neural regulator is overloading. The treatment dosage was too high." "Impossible," the doctor scoffed, attempting to push Colin away. "The dosage was precisely calculated for her body mass." "For an adult Azurian, maybe," Colin countered, holding his ground, "but her metabolic rate is different because of her condition. The medication is building up in her system." The seizure intensified. Lanaya's eyes rolled back, and a trickle of silvery fluid leaked from her nose. She's crashing, Colin said urgently. We need to flush the excess medication from her system now. Preposterous, the doctor protested. The standard protocol. We'll kill her if we wait, Colin cut him off, looking directly at Alista. I need your permission. Now. Alista's golden eyes darted between her convulsing daughter and the confident human. Do it, she commanded. Colin reached for his pocket medkit, a habit from his military days he'd never abandoned. I need a neural stabilizer and a metabolic accelerant. The second doctor reluctantly produced the items from their medical case. Working with practiced efficiency, Colin administered the stabilizer directly to the base of Linaya's skull, then followed with the accelerant via a pressure injector to her arm. Come on, kiddo, he murmured. Fight through this. For several agonizing seconds, nothing changed. Then gradually the convulsions began to subside. Linaya's breathing steadied and the blue tinge receded from her lips. Her neural patterns are stabilizing, the second doctor admitted, checking a handheld scanner with obvious surprise. Colin continued monitoring her pulse. She'll need electrolyte replacement and a modified treatment protocol moving forward. The current regimen is too aggressive. The lead doctor bristled. You have no authority to make such recommendations. Dr. Krell has been treating Azurian neurogenic atrophy for decades. And how many of his patients have had multiple seizures? Colin challenged. When the doctor didn't answer, Alista's eyes narrowed dangerously. I want a full review of Linaya's treatment plan, she ordered, and I want Mr. Grant included in all medical discussions moving forward. But Madam Tex, he's a human. His species has barely mastered interstellar travel, let alone advanced xenomedicine. This human just saved my daughter when your advanced protocols failed, Alista replied icily. That earns him a voice. As the medical team carefully transferred the now stable Linaya to a stretcher, Alista placed a hand on Colin's arm. The contact sent warmth spreading through his body despite the crisis. Thank you, she said softly, her usual composure replaced by raw gratitude. You were right to question the treatments. Colin covered her hand with his own. She's going to be okay. We'll figure this out. For a moment, they remained connected, something unspoken passing between them. Then Alista straightened, her CEO persona sliding back into place. I need to accompany Linaya to the medical suite, she said. We'll discuss this further once she's settled. Colin nodded, watching as she followed the medical team from the room. Only when they were gone did he realize his heart was racing, and not just from the emergency. Colin spent the night in a chair beside Linaya's bed in the medical suite, monitoring her vitals and adjusting her medication. By morning, her condition had stabilized completely. She slept peacefully, her small blue face relaxed for the first time since he'd met her. Alista entered just after dawn, still elegant despite the dark circles under her golden eyes. She changed into a simple tunic and pants that somehow managed to look both comfortable and fashionable. You stayed all night, she observed softly, moving to stand beside him. Combat medic habit, Colin replied, stretching his stiff muscles. Never leave a patient until they're stable. The doctor said she's responding remarkably well to your adjusted protocol. Alista's fingers brushed his shoulder, the touch brief but electric. Thank you. She's a fighter, Colin smiled, looking at the sleeping child. Gets that from her mother, I'd guess. A hint of color darkened Alista's blue cheeks. Perhaps, though I've never faced anything as bravely as she faces her condition. How long has she been ill? Since she was 4. It began with minor coordination issues, then progressed. Alista's voice remained steady, but her eyes betrayed her pain. Her father, he couldn't accept it. He threw himself into researching cures, experimental treatments. When he died 3 years ago, I continued his work. I'm sorry, Colin said simply, about your husband and about what Linaya's going through. Talon wasn't just my husband. He was Tex Interstellar's chief medical researcher. Alista's gaze grew distant. The treatments Linaya receives were his design, his legacy. Understanding dawned on Colin. That's why you've been so committed to this particular protocol, even with the side effects. Is that judgment I hear, Mr. Grant? Her tone cooled slightly. Not judgment. Empathy. He met her gaze directly. Grief makes us hold on to things we should sometimes let go. Before Alista could respond, the medical suite doors slid open with a forceful hiss. A tall, gaunt Vordarian with ash-gray skin and 6-fingered hands strode in, radiating authority and barely contained fury. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, brandishing a data pad. "Who authorized changes to Linaya's treatment protocol?" "I did, Doctor." "Krell," Alista replied calmly. "After the seizure last night, a minor adverse reaction that was well within expected parameters," Krell interrupted dismissively, "and I'm told this human took it upon himself to administer non-approved medications? This human saved my daughter's life." Alista's voice took on a dangerous edge. Krell's 4 eyes narrowed, the upper pair focusing on Alista, while the lower pair glared at Colin. "With respect, Madam Tex, humans barely understand their own physiology, let alone Azurian neurology. Whatever temporary improvement you're seeing is likely a placebo effect at best, dangerous interference at worst." Colin stood, meeting the doctor's gaze evenly. The seizure was caused by medication buildup due to Linaya's compromised metabolic rate. Her liver enzymes were at toxic levels. "Preposterous. I reviewed her blood work myself." "Before or after the seizure?" Colin challenged. "Because I'm looking at the results right now." He held up his data pad, displaying Linaya's test results. Her toxicity levels were off the charts. The standard dosage protocol doesn't account for her specific genetic variation. Krell snatched the pad, his long fingers scrolling rapidly through the data. His upper eyes blinked rapidly, a Vordarian tell for surprise. "This is unexpected," he admitted reluctantly, "but hardly conclusive." "Conclusive enough that my daughter is sleeping peacefully for the first time in months," Alista interjected. "Mr. Grant's modifications will continue." "This is highly irregular," Krell protested. "The human has no formal qualifications in xenomedicine." 8 years as a combat medic in a multi-species military force," Colin corrected. "I've treated more Azurians than I can count." "Battlefield triage is hardly comparable to specialized neurological treatment." "No, it's often more complex with fewer resources and higher stakes," Colin replied evenly. "Look, Doctor, I'm not trying to take over. I'm suggesting we collaborate. Your expertise combined with my field experience." Krell's posture remained rigid. "And if I refuse, then you can tender your resignation," Alista said coolly. "My daughter's welfare is non-negotiable." A tense silence filled the room. Finally, Krell's shoulders slumped slightly. "I will review the modified protocol," he conceded stiffly, "but I maintain my reservations about human medical practices." After Krell departed, Alista sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. "That was intense," Colin commented. "Krell has been our family physician for decades. He worked closely with Talon on developing these treatments." She rubbed her temples. "This is difficult for him." "And for you," Colin observed gently. "You're caught between honoring your husband's work and doing what's best for Linaya." Alista looked up, vulnerability flashing across her face. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "See through people so easily. It's not an Azurian trait to be so perceptive of others' emotions." Colin shrugged. "Humans are social animals. Reading people kept our ancestors alive when we were still hunting with sticks." A small smile touched her lips. "Your species continues to surprise me." "We're full of surprises," he agreed, with a wink that made her color deepen again. Linaya stirred then, her eyes fluttering open. "Colin? Mother? Is the bad part over?" "All over, kiddo," Colin assured her, moving to her bedside. "How are you feeling?" "Hungry," she declared, making both adults laugh. "A good sign," Colin said to Alista. "Her appetite returning means the toxicity is clearing." After Linaya had eaten and fallen back asleep, Alista led Colin to her private study, a warm space lined with actual paper books, a rarity in the digital age. "I want to show you something," she said, activating a holographic display. "These are all of Tylen's research notes on Linaya's condition." Colin whistled softly at the volume of data. "This is comprehensive." Tylen was nothing if not thorough. Pride and sadness mingled in her voice. "I've continued funding research, but progress has stalled since his death." "Mind if I look through it? There might be something we've missed." Alista hesitated only briefly. "Please do. I'll have it transferred to your data pad." As the transfer completed, their hands brushed. This time, neither pulled away immediately. Colin felt the cool smoothness of her skin against his, a contrast that somehow felt perfectly complimentary. "We should get some rest," Alista said finally, her voice slightly huskier than before. "It's been a long night." "Probably wise," Colin agreed, though neither moved to break the contact. "Colin," she said softly, using his first name without prompting for the first time. "What you did for Lanaya, I won't forget it. Just doing my job," he replied with a smile. "No," she shook her head. "You did far more than your job. You cared. That's rare in my experience." Before he could respond, she leaned forward and pressed her lips briefly to his cheek, cool and soft against his warm skin. Then stepped back, composure returning. "Good night, Mr. Grant," she said formally, though her eyes held a new warmth. "Good night, miss." "Tex," he replied, fighting the urge to touch the spot where her lips had been. As he headed to his quarters, datapad in hand, Colin realized he was in dangerous territory. He'd been hired to care for Lanaya, not fall for her mother. Yet as he settled in to review Talon's research, he couldn't help but feel he was already too far gone to turn back. 2 weeks after Lanaya's seizure, Colin found himself in an unfamiliar position, dressed in a tailored suit, escorting Lanaya to the Celestial Academy's annual Benefactors Gala. Under his modified treatment protocol, Lanaya had improved dramatically, enough to attend school functions again, though Colin remained vigilant for any signs of relapse. "You look handsome," Lanaya declared as they waited in the mansion's grand foyer. "Mother will think so too." Colin tugged at his collar, uncomfortable in the formal attire. "Your mother has more important things to worry about tonight than how I look, kiddo." "Don't be silly," Lanaya giggled. "She always notices you." Before Colin could respond, Alista descended the curved staircase, and his ability to form coherent thoughts temporarily abandoned him. Her gown, a shimmering creation that seemed to capture and release light with every movement, accentuated her tall, elegant form. Her white hair was styled in an intricate updo, adorned with what appeared to be actual stars, tiny points of light that twinkled against the deep blue of her skin. "Wow," Colin breathed, forgetting all pretense of professionalism. "I concur," Alista replied with a small smile, her golden eyes taking in his formal attire with obvious appreciation. "You clean up remarkably well, Mr. Grant." "He does, doesn't he?" Lanaya agreed enthusiastically. "I told him you'd notice." Alista's cheeks darkened slightly. "Observant, as always, my dear." The past 2 weeks had seen a gradual but definite shift in Colin and Alista's relationship. Their late-night research sessions had evolved from purely professional to something more intimate, sharing stories of their pasts, discovering unexpected commonalities despite their different species, and occasionally lingering in each other's company long after the work was done. But tonight wasn't about their growing attraction. Tonight was Lanaya's first public appearance since her health had improved, in a crucial board meeting for Alista. "Remember," Alista said as they boarded the private shuttle, "Doctor, Krell will be there with several board members. We must present a united front regarding Lanaya's treatment." "Understood," Colin nodded, though Krell hasn't exactly been cooperative lately. "He's threatened by you," Lanaya piped up from her hover chair, "because you're smarter than him." "Lanaya," Alista admonished gently, though her eyes sparkled with amusement. "Just repeating what I heard Nex tell the kitchen staff," Lanaya said innocently. Colin raised an eyebrow. "Nex said that? I thought he couldn't stand me." "He said you were distressingly competent for a human," Lanaya clarified. "That's practically a love letter from Nex." The shuttle ride to the academy passed quickly, filled with Lanaya's excited chatter about seeing her friends. As they approached the gleaming building, Colin noticed her nervousness growing. "Hey," he said softly, kneeling beside her chair. "You okay?" Lanaya bit her lip. "What if they stare at me? Or worse, pretend I'm not there like before?" "Then they're idiots," Colin said firmly, "and not worth your time." "Colin is right," Alista added, smoothing Lanaya's hair. "But also remember that you're a Tex. You hold your head high, no matter what. And if anyone gives you trouble," Colin winked, "just tell them your human bodyguard eats rude aliens for breakfast." Lanaya giggled, her anxiety visibly easing. "With salt?" "Loads of it," Colin confirmed solemnly. The gala was in full swing when they arrived, a glittering assembly of the sector's elite. Colin noted the subtle shift in atmosphere as they entered, conversations pausing momentarily as attendees registered the unusual sight. The Tex heiress, her daughter in a hover chair, and a human in formal attire walking beside them as an equal. Elista navigated the social currents with practiced ease, introducing Colin as Lenaya's medical advisor to those who inquired. Most accepted this with polite nods, though some cast dubious glances at his obviously human features. "Madam Tex," a smooth voice interrupted as they reached the refreshment table. "How delightful to see Lenaya well enough to attend." Colin turned to find a tall, copper-skinned Meridian with slicked-back silver hair regarding them with calculating eyes. Something about him immediately set Colin's combat instincts on edge. "Director Pax," Elista acknowledged coolly, "yes, Lenaya has been responding well to her new treatment protocol." "So I've heard," Pax's gaze shifted to Colin. "This must be the human responsible for the controversial changes." "Colin Grant?" Colin extended his hand in the human gesture, curious to see if Pax would accept it. After a deliberate pause, Pax briefly touched Colin's hand with obvious distaste. "Charmed. I understand you were a janitor before your medical career?" "Combat medic, actually," Colin corrected pleasantly. "The janitorial position was temporary." "How versatile humans are," Pax remarked with thinly veiled condescension, "adapting to whatever role is available. Like parasites." Elista stiffened beside him. "Director Pax is Tex Interstellar's head of competitive analysis," she explained to Colin, her tone warning him to tread carefully. "Fascinating," Colin replied, maintaining his smile. "I'd love to hear more about your work sometime, Director. I'm particularly interested in how you analyze the competition for Talon Tex's neurological breakthroughs." Something flickered in Pax's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or concern. "Another time, perhaps. The board meeting will begin shortly, Elista. We have much to discuss regarding recent developments." After Pax departed, Elista turned to Colin with a raised eyebrow. "That was bold." "Testing a theory," Colin murmured. "I need to tell you something important, but not here." Too many ears. Before Elista could respond, Lenaya was surrounded by a group of her classmates, their initial awkwardness giving way to genuine excitement as she demonstrated her improved mobility. "Go to your meeting," Colin told Elista. "I'll stay with Lenaya." Elista hesitated, clearly torn between duty and curiosity about Colin's cryptic comment. "We'll talk later," she decided finally. "Be careful, Colin." Pax has many allies here. As Elista departed for the board meeting, Colin kept a watchful eye on Lenaya while observing the room. He noticed Dr. Krell in deep conversation with Pax in a corner, both occasionally glancing in his direction. "Mr. Grant," a familiar voice spoke beside him. "A moment of your time?" Colin turned to find Principal Dorn, the Phaedron administrator who had first allowed Elista to meet with him. "Of course, sir." "I must say, young Lenaya's improvement is remarkable," Dorn commented, his four eyes blinking in sequence. "The entire faculty has noticed the change?" "She's a remarkable kid," Colin replied, watching as Lenaya laughed with her friends. "Indeed. Though I've heard rumors that the board is concerned about certain aspects of her care." Dorn lowered his voice. "Particularly the involvement of a human in proprietary Azurian medical protocols." Colin's instincts sharpened. "Is that so?" Dr. Krell has been quite vocal about his objections, and Director Pax has raised questions about potential impropriety between you and Madam Tex. "Impropriety?" Colin kept his expression neutral despite his rising anger. "Humans are known to be emotionally manipulative," Dorn said apologetically. "Some suggest you've used Lenaya's condition to ingratiate yourself with one of the sector's wealthiest women." Colin clenched his jaw. "That's ridiculous." "I agree," Dorn said, surprising him, "which is why I thought you should know what you're facing. Madam Tex has many allies, but also powerful enemies within her own company. Enemies who might use her apparent fondness for you against her." Before Colin could respond, a commotion erupted across the room. Lenaya's hover chair was surrounded by a group of older alien students, their postures clearly hostile. "Excuse me," Colin said sharply, already moving toward the confrontation. As he approached, he heard a tall Thraexian youth sneering, "Shouldn't even be here. Everyone knows Tex only keeps you alive for the tax benefits." "That's not true," Lenaya's voice was small but defiant. Of course it is, another student jeered. Why else would she waste resources on defective offspring? Azurians normally call the weak. Colin reached the group, his combat-trained presence immediately commanding attention. Problem here? The Thraxian youth straightened, attempting bravado. This is none of your concern, human. Lenaya is my concern, Colin replied evenly, and you're upsetting her. We're simply explaining Azurian cultural norms, the alien said with false innocence. The weak are eliminated. It's natural selection. Humans wouldn't understand, being so sentimental. You know what humans do understand? Colin stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous timbre that made the young aliens instinctively back up. Respect, compassion, and the fact that true strength isn't about physical capability, it's about character. Something you clearly lack. How dare you speak to me that way? The Thraxian sputtered. My father is on the Galactic Council, and I'm sure he'd be fascinated to hear how his son bullies disabled children at school functions. Colin replied with a cold smile. Shall we call him over? The youth paled, his mottled skin turning ashen. This isn't over, human. As the group slunk away, Colin knelt beside Lenaya's chair. You okay, kiddo? To his surprise, Lenaya was smiling. That was amazing. No one's ever stood up for me like that before. Get used to it, Colin winked. It's what friends do. Across the room, he caught sight of Dr. Krell watching them, his expression unreadable before he turned and hurried toward the boardroom where Alista's meeting was taking place. Colin had a sinking feeling that the night's conflicts were just beginning. Colin's comm unit buzzed urgently. Peary's panicked voice came through as he answered. Mr. Grant, emergency! Dr. Krell tampered with young mistress's refreshment. Saw him add compound when no one looking. Colin's blood ran cold as he glanced at Lenaya, who was sipping a sparkling blue beverage a server had just delivered. Lenaya, don't drink that! He lunged forward, knocking the glass from her hand. The liquid splashed across the polished floor, drawing startled gasps from nearby guests. Colin? Lenaya looked up at him, confused. What's wrong? The drink was tampered with, he explained quickly, already scanning her for symptoms. How much did you swallow? Just a sip, she replied, her eyes widening with fear. It tasted bitter. Colin's combat medic training kicked in. He pulled a small scanner from his pocket, standard equipment he'd never abandoned, and ran it over Lenaya's form. The readings made his heart sink. Neural suppressant, he muttered, designed to trigger a catastrophic seizure. He tapped his comm. Peary, I need you to get to the medical supply room. Bring me a vial of compound TX7 and a neural stabilizer, now. As Peary acknowledged, Colin turned to the growing crowd of onlookers. I need this area cleared. Medical emergency. Most backed away, but Principal Dorn stepped forward. What's happening? Someone poisoned Lenaya, Colin said bluntly. I need to reach Alista immediately. The board meeting is sealed, Dorn replied, his four eyes blinking rapidly in distress. Security protocols. Override them, Colin snapped. Tell her Lenaya's been poisoned and Krell is responsible. As Dorn hurried away, Colin focused on Lenaya, whose breathing was becoming labored. Stay with me, kiddo. Help is coming. I feel funny, she whispered, her small blue fingers trembling. Like before, but worse. I know, but you're going to be okay, Colin assured her, monitoring her vital signs. Remember what I told you about humans? That you're stubborn, Lenaya managed a weak smile. Exactly. And we don't give up on the people we care about. Peary arrived, her forearms clutching the requested medical supplies. Colin worked swiftly, preparing the antidote with practiced efficiency. This will counteract the suppressant, he explained to Lenaya as he administered the first injection. It might sting a little. Lenaya winced but remained brave. Why would Dr. Krell do this? That's what I intend to find out, Colin replied grimly. Across the room, the doors to the board meeting burst open. Alista emerged, her face a mask of controlled fury, followed by board members and a smug-looking Pax. When she spotted Colin kneeling beside Lenaya, she rushed forward. What happened? She demanded, dropping to her knees beside her daughter. Krell poisoned her drink, Colin explained, administering the neural stabilizer. She'll be okay, but we need to get her to a proper medical facility. Security is searching for Krell now, Alista said, her voice tight with rage. He fled when Dorn delivered your message. Director Pax approached, his copper features arranged in a mask of concern that didn't reach his eyes. How unfortunate. Perhaps the human misunderstood the doctor's intentions? There's no misunderstanding neural suppressants in a child's drink, Colin retorted, rising to face Pax. Just like there was no misunderstanding what happened to Talon Tex. A hush fell over the gathered crowd. Pax's expression hardened. Choose your next words carefully, human. I've been reviewing Talon's research, Colin continued, undaunted. The original treatment protocol was working. But someone altered the formulas after his death, increasing dosages to toxic levels, ensuring Lanaya would never fully recover. Illista stepped forward, her golden eyes blazing. Is this true? I discovered the alterations last night, Colin confirmed. The timestamps on the modified files trace back to Pax's security credentials. He's been sabotaging Lanaya's treatment from the beginning. Preposterous, Pax sputtered. This human is trying to create division. The files don't lie, Colin cut him off. And neither does the recording I found in Talon's private server, a conversation between him and Krell, where Talon confronts him about unauthorized access to his research by Director Pax. Pax's composure cracked. You couldn't possibly have access to Talon's private server? Illista finished, her voice deadly calm. I gave him access. Full access. Something you've been trying to obtain for years. Understanding dawned on Pax's face, quickly replaced by calculation. The board has already voted, Illista. Your judgment is compromised by your attachment to this human. Your position as CEO is suspended pending investigation. Actually, a new voice interrupted, the vote is invalid. All heads turned to see an elderly Azurian board member step forward. Procedural regulations require all voting members to be present. I was deliberately misinformed about the meeting time. Chairwoman Tella, Illista acknowledged with respect. Furthermore, Tella continued, I've reviewed the evidence Mr. Grant compiled. It is compelling. Security detained Director Pax for questioning. As security officers moved toward Pax, he lunged unexpectedly, grabbing Lanaya from her hover chair and pressing a small device against her neck. Stay back, he hissed. This is a neural disruptor. One activation will fry her central nervous system. Colin froze, assessing the situation with combat-trained eyes. Pax was desperate, his back literally against the wall. The gathered crowd gasped and retreated, leaving a semicircle of space around the standoff. Let her go, Pax, Illista pleaded, her composure finally breaking. She's innocent in this. Innocent, Pax sneered. She's the heir to everything that should have been mine. Talon chose me as his successor before you seduced him. His research, his company, all of it was promised to me. That's not true, Illista said softly. Talon valued your work, but he never intended you to lead. Lies! Pax's hand trembled on the disruptor. I was going to be patient. Let the treatments slowly deteriorate her condition until nature took its course. But then this human interfered. Colin caught Lanaya's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. The girl, despite her fear, understood. You know what humans are really good at, Pax? Colin asked conversationally, taking a casual step forward. Stay back, Pax warned. Distraction, Colin finished. In that moment, Lanaya bit down hard on Pax's hand. The alien yelped in surprise, his grip loosening just enough for Colin to lunge forward with inhuman speed. His fist connected with Pax's jaw with a satisfying crack, sending the neural disruptor flying and dropping the copper-skinned alien to the floor. Security swarmed in, restraining the dazed Pax as Colin lifted Lanaya safely back into her hover chair. That was awesome, Lanaya exclaimed, her earlier symptoms already fading thanks to Colin's quick treatment. You moved so fast. Human adrenaline, Colin winked, comes in handy sometimes. Illista approached them, her composure restored, but her eyes soft with emotion. Are you both all right? We're fine, Colin assured her, though I'd still like to get Lanaya checked out properly. Chairwoman Tella joined them, regarding Colin with newfound respect. It seems we owe you a debt of gratitude, Mr. Grant. Not only for saving young Lanaya, but for uncovering this conspiracy. Just doing my job, Colin replied modestly. Your job was caretaker, not investigator, Tella observed with a hint of amusement. Humans are remarkably adaptable. It's one of our better qualities, Colin agreed. As medical personnel arrived to examine Linnea, Elista drew Colin aside, her cool fingers entwining with his warm ones. "You knew about Pax all along?" she asked quietly. "I suspected something was wrong with the treatment protocols from the beginning," Colin explained. "But it wasn't until I started reviewing Talon's original research that I realized someone had tampered with them. The rest was just connecting the dots. And you didn't tell me immediately because—" "I needed proof," Colin said simply, "and I didn't want to reopen old wounds without being certain." Elista studied him, wonder in her golden eyes. "You continue to surprise me, Colin Grant." "In good ways, I hope." "The best ways," she confirmed, stepping closer. "When I first saw you with Linnea that day at school, I was intrigued by your kindness. I never imagined you would end up saving both our lives." "What happens now?" Colin asked, acutely aware of her proximity. "Pax will face justice. Krell too, when they find him." Her fingers tightened around his. "As for us, the board may have questions about our relationship." "And what will you tell them?" A smile curved Elista's lips. "That when this humanoid alien billionaire saw a human male janitor cleaning her disabled child, what she did next was the best decision of her life. She brought him home." With that, she leaned forward and pressed her cool lips to his warm ones, no longer caring who might see. The kiss was a promise of healing, of new beginnings, and of two worlds coming together in perfect harmony. When they parted, Colin grinned. "Humanity for the win?" "Humanity indeed," Elista agreed with a laugh. "Definitely. What's that charming Earth phrase? Humanity, fuck yeah." Colin laughed, pulling her close again. "Couldn't have said it better myself."